Okay, so it is my honor to introduce to you our speaker, Mandhla Khanye. He is from Zimbabwe. He completed 2 master's degrees, Master of Arts in Religion and Master of Arts in Education. And he is now a PhD education with specialization in educational administration. He is a student at the Adventist International Institute of Advanced Studies, or IAS. He worked as a college teacher and conference youth director in Namibia. He's my student. That is something I am very proud of. And he sat in my qualitative research class. And this topic is something that he is passionate about, and that is how to collect data online, especially during these times, such as during this pandemic. And not only this time, there may be other circumstances when it is difficult for a researcher to gather data face-to-face, physical on-site. And so this topic, I hope, will be really meaningful to all of you as you listen to him. So it is my honor to present to you Mandhla Khanye. Mandhla, you now have the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Arcel, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. I think to others is good morning, others is good afternoon, and to some is good evening. So this is the goodness of virtual, that we can meet at the same time, but in different geographical locations. Allow me to share my screen for presentation. Let me see. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Mandhla, go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. At this moment, I'll be presenting about this case study, which is entitled Getting Closer from Far Away, a case study on qualitative data collection of PhD students during the COVID-19 pandemic. We all know that the pandemic brought many questions and disruptions in our daily endeavors, and education institutions were not spared. So I am excited to bring to you this pandemic. I know some had questions and some were scared and some dared to venture into it. So I had the privilege to study those who had the privilege to venture into the unknown. So the background of the study, as I've told you, is basically in January 2020, the World Health Organization announced the discovery of the novel coronavirus, which spread around the world and was declared a pandemic. And this affected everybody all over the world, all organizations, institutions, families. This include research. And we find that students and researchers ideally needed to collect data either by self-report, observation, interview, focus group, etc., which is typically done face-to-face. But because of the pandemic, that had to cease. The students experienced much difficulty in using conventional method of collecting data for their dissertation. So these were the background of the study. And the purpose of my study is in twofold. First is case study. First is to explore how PhD students in dissertation writing engage in data collection during the COVID pandemic. Second is to discover the strategies they use to mitigate their data collection. Hopefully, if we discover this can help us in different ways when we face challenging circumstances like the pandemic. And I had 4 research questions. The first one is, what are the experiences of PhD students as they collect data during the COVID-19 pandemic? Second is, what challenges do PhD students encounter in collecting data during COVID-19 pandemic? And how do PhD students mitigate the challenges they encounter in their data collection during the pandemic? And lastly, what are the ideal approaches for collecting data during challenging times like COVID-19 pandemic? And in my literature review, I use Joanne et al. It says here, especially Efron and Ravid, they say the process of literature review is fundamental in research. It provides the basis of exploring previous ratings and systematic way of approaching findings from literature. So I use the broad scan, focus review, and comprehensive critique. And I chose three theoretical frameworks, which is the resilience theory, motivational theory, and choice theory. And my research design, as you know, it's a qualitative and exploratory study, which includes in-depth through interview and observation and own perspective. The exploratory study is actually solving problems, and especially the studies that are not clearly defined or that have not been studied before. And this is the summary of the research setting. It is a higher education institution in Asian country. The institution has strong internet system. Students and faculty members are well versed with virtual and online modality. The student population represents 68 countries. The travel restrictions imposed by the government lessen the movement of students off campus and physical interaction with each other and with the rest of the world. The sample which I chose is this person, he or she is a PhD student of a selected higher education institution. She has collected data during COVID-19 pandemic. She is willing to participate in this study. And the sampling procedure that I chose was the purposive sampling of choosing especially the people who has experienced this phenomenon. And the data collection method, I used in-depth interviews and focus group discussion. For my data analysis, I utilize the thematic analysis framework of Brown and Clark, which has 6 steps. We start by knowing the data, creating codes, finding themes, reviewing themes, refining the themes, and reporting the findings. And I also utilize the ethical consideration by Criswell, 2014. For my operational data collection method, I had limited sampling because of the number of students who had collected data during the pandemic. It was still not that much. And it was impossible to do observations since the data collection by participants were already done. Internet fluctuation during the in-depth interviews and focus group discussions also was a challenge. Then my operational data analysis, I used the in-depth interviews were conducted using Zoom. The video recording was automatically translated to audio by Zoom. Data was transcribed using online software OTA. Minor errors of transcription were found and corrected. Transcripts were sent to the participants for verification and triangulation. And thematic analysis was followed, starting by familiarizing with the data using Brown and Clark 206. The themes were corresponded with the research questions which they were answering. And this is the profile of my participants. This will help us when we now go to the findings and explanation. We find that out of all the 11 participants, most of them, they were in education, and a few two are in religion. And gender, we have about 7 males and 6 females and 7 males. Then we have also the on-campus and off-campus participants, and the research designs which the participants use basically the appreciative inquiry, the case study, the narrative inquiry, and phenomenology. And my participants, some they collected data nationally, some international, and some they collected local. What I mean by local is that it's either in their institution or in their area of residence around where they are staying. Now let's go to the presentation of the findings. When I was looking at the data and going through it, following the framework, I find that there are some themes that are emerging, exciting themes that run through this data. And the first theme that I found is pleasant surprises. And under it, it is about 3 categories. The first one is participant sacrificial attitude. The second one is positive feelings in data collection. And the third one is opportunities. Let's start with the first one, which says participant sacrificial attitude. It says the researchers were amazed by how their participants went an extra mile just to assist in data collection. Some participants risked the COVID-19 by traveling to another village where there was better internet connection for virtual interviews. So these were the actions done by the participants just to help the researchers get the data they want. Frank said in a somber voice, I had to ask people to leave their village and spend a whole day and night in another village. And according to Gesh, he said, I obtained a very rich data from the participants. And despite the COVID-19 realities, Raymond said, we decided that we can still help
David. Hello, David.
Maybe he's not around.
Mandhla is frozen, right?
I'm
Yes,
here.
yes.
I'm here. Yeah, I think he's frozen.
Okay. He is frozen. What
Okay,
can
he
we
will
do?
reconnect.
I can continue. I have his PowerPoint. So
Sure, Paul.
so
Mhm.
so you turned him. I mean, I can now share.
Sure, yes, yes.
All right, wonderful. And maybe Jasmine, you are there?
Yes.
Hello, Jasmine.
Ma'am, I'm calling Mandhla on Messenger.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, very nice. So let me just go to that part. Where is he now? Let me know if he is back. Okay, I'll just cover for him for now. Okay, so here we go. We are there. So thank you to our audience. Thank you for waiting. All right, so as we see here, yeah, so that's the first category, participant sacrificial attitudes. Second one is positive feelings in data collection. So the negative news about the pandemic was hanging over the minds of the researchers as they prepared themselves for a bitter experience. However, it turned out that collecting data during pandemic was actually an exciting adventure. So for example, one researcher said, I am happy, I'm feeling great because I didn't have to book a ticket, airfare, and also I didn't have to travel to my country for data collection. Our context is that the context of this study is that the PhD students, usually when they did their data collection, they would go back to their country. So in this case, they didn't have to do that because they were doing the data collection online. Another participant said, it was just a unique event. I would say I feel very excited. It was exciting because I used new ways to contact participants and persuade them. All right. And then the third category is opportunities. Though collecting data during the pandemic was enshrined with restrictions, the participants were surprised by opportunities that came their way while gathering information. So for example, it was a privilege to talk with highly honored people of the organization, one participant in the FGD said. Another participant, I was able to connect people, to extend my connections, and other people who have the same passion as me. And also another for Raymond, it was so exciting and more joyous as the participants also find it surprising and interesting, especially with the creativity and innovation theme. All right, so these are the three categories under the research questions. What are the experiences? So their experiences were very positive, as you can see. So for research question number 2,
I think Mandhla is back.
Mandhla is here. All right. Okay, Mandhla, I will now stop sharing and you can resume your presentation. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that was a test of collecting data online. So this was a real practical issue. By the way, this is research question number 2.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Let me share my screen. See if I can share my screen here. All right. Sorry for that interruption, but at least it gave me the test of collecting the data during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as I continue, we find that in research question number 2, we have 4 themes: health risks and travel restriction, participants unavailability, communication dilemma, lack of technical knowledge. Let's dive to the first one, which is the health risk and travel restriction. Though permission to collect data during the pandemic was secured, the researchers faced restriction hurdles ranging from how to conduct interview with social distance in an open space, how to get participants to the interview venue, and how to travel during the pandemic. The group of my participants is composed of, I can say, 3 segments. The first are the people who collected data at the beginning of the pandemic, just between 3 months and 6 months, and the others, they collected data middle of the pandemic, and the last group are those who collected their data just as the pandemic is about to end. So they have different experiences in all. For example, I was compared to travel to the countries of my participants during the pandemic. And Frank also says, I was said that his data-rich participants could not travel to the interview venue. He says, I was not able to interview some of the people that I really wanted to interview. And as I said, Raymond collected data partly face-to-face at the very beginning of the COVID-19. According to him, one of the challenges was to find a location in the open air where everybody could be comfortable. As you know, in the beginning of the pandemic, there were it was not really clear which protocols you should use or which one you should not. Then the second one is participants unavailability. The pandemic affected the schedule of participants. Some were available for a shorter time than required for interview. Others were just unavailable at the set date, time, and venue. Others dropped off during the last minute because of pandemic challenges. Some of the researchers said the participants would tell them, I will meet you this time, but the moment they call the participant is actually in quarantine and cannot converse with them, or they have lost their loved ones. Maria said that it is a big challenge to schedule participants remotely during the pandemic. Frank recalls an incident where he had to rush the interview. I was under pressure to cut it short, the interview. Sometimes I omitted some questions. And for Gesh, it is very hard to catch the participants in the time that they are free. And the third one is communication dilemma. The pandemic changed the mode of communication. Participants were adjusting with the new ways of information sharing. For some, it was a techno illiterate, others had internet challenges, while mode of communication. As you know, when the pandemic came, there were various modes of communications out there. So the researchers were trying to find out which one can work the best. Frank acknowledges that he had internet, but at the same time, he was not able to talk to certain people, and because they didn't really have internet, it has hard to make follow-ups. In fact, it is kind of impossible, says Badlon. He retaliated that making follow-ups after getting interview was actually impossible. And Gesh acknowledges that it is very hard to get what they said because some of the participants spoke in their vernacular languages, or they mixed English and other languages. So it was difficult for the researchers to really get, even if they're recording, now they had to go through everything one by one. Let's go to the presentation of research question number 3, which says, how do PhD students mitigate the challenges they encounter in their data collection during COVID-19 pandemic? In this question, we find 4 themes: adapting creativity and innovation strategies, seeking on-site help, observing ethical consideration, praying for God's assistance. In adapting creativity and innovation strategies, since the pandemic was new, people had to find ways of dealing with the situation and each other. A researcher's manual at that time had no information on collecting data during the pandemic. As you know, that was the time people were still writing on how to collect data during using virtual or remotely. And most of us were reluctant to try it. It says, when some of his participant internet became problematic, Frank says, I send my question in their email or WhatsApp. I give them a summary of my study of what I would like to know. And according to Batlon, I couriered the questions to my participants because that was the only way I can collect data from him. He actually retaliated that this participant, he had no internet, he had no cell phone, did not use email, and he did not want to use other mode. He said, send the paper using the post, I'll answer, then I'll send back to you. Recording a face-to-face interview of a face mask people with social distance challenge. This is Raymond because he collected his data during the beginning of the pandemic. So he tried to collect it face-to-face, but now he needed to have social distance. So he came up with an innovation of tying his recording cell phone on a selfie stick. So he'll be moving it around the participants as they are interviewing each other. Seeking on-site help, that is the second one. To mitigate the challenge of not visiting participant sites, not knowing the respondents personally, and to coordinate focus group, the researchers decided to get help from someone on site to coordinate appointments and follow-ups. According to Batlon, it is good if someone will watch for you on site. And if you are not familiar with the place or the participant, then find someone to help you. Frank noted that, so I need somebody who operates the cell phones or the laptop. I had to pay someone who can operate the system or the device. For him, he was dealing with rural people, so they were not techno people, so they needed an assistance on site to help them record very well. As we move on, observing ethical consideration, maintaining ethics is one of the strategies of getting trust from respondents that results in getting rich data. For Gesh, she noticed respondents when allotted time is over and asked if they still wanted to continue. She says, for example, My permission is only 30 minutes, but they spoke around 1 hour. Raymond says, I realized that I need to respect the participants and also value them because they are the ones who are giving the information. And this one was one of the highlights that interested me. It says, praying for God's assistance. Most of the participants indicated that they put their data collection in God's hands by constantly praying. Gage says, God answered my prayers. And Badlon added and said, I attribute to this with God. I always say that the process of data collection is not just an academic experience, but more of a spiritual experience with God. And Gofa says, I always pray to God to lead me and remind my participants of my interview. So this is interesting that as they collect data, they also think about their belief, how to integrate it in their academic life. And we come to our fourth and final research question, which says, what are the ideal approaches for collecting data during challenging times like COVID-19 pandemic? We have three themes in this research question: maximizing technology, thinking outside the box, adapting flexibility. Maximizing technology, there are methods that can be useful for collecting data aided by technology. The researchers tried various media. For the FGD 787, it says there are many online platforms that are utilized for data collection. And according to Frank, if the internet is too low, and then I prefer to send questions with explanation to their email or WhatsApp text. So in overall, all these participants, they try to use every technology opportunities that was available, was ethical, and that was supported by their committee, dissertation committee members. And the second one is thinking outside the box. There are many unforeseen things that happen during data collection. The ideal ways is to prepare to adapt quickly to the changing situation, be flexible to try new ways that are in line with proper data collection. Frank's participants were not familiar with technology and spoke different languages. He ended up hiring somebody who would operate the device for the people at the same time translate. He says for his focus group, there were a number of people, but they spoke different languages, although they can understand one language. So they mix their languages while they are being interviewed. So he needed somebody who can translate to them what he's saying and also translate to him what they're saying. When respondents do not reply emails, Gesh encouraged researchers not to give up. She says, if 3 days they did not reply, I send another follow-up email. For Raymond, collecting data during pandemic was completely an experience outside the box. And this one, adapting the flexibility, is one of the interesting features that we find for collecting data during the pandemic. All respondents have said that in data collection, there's the ideal, the real data collection procedure. It is good idea to have second plan in case the first one does not work. For example, FGD says, I use Messenger because that is very convenient for my participants as students. Frank elaborates that Zoom is one of the greatest tools that you can use. If it does not work, use WhatsApp in low internet connections. So it collects data during challenging times. We need to be flexible and adapting and having always second plan or third plan or fourth plan. Now we come to the analysis summary. As I analyze my respondents and what they gave to me, I find that some they data collection using IDI and others they included IDI, FGD. If we look at this table before me, it showed the participants' data collection availability needs for technology. For example, this is according to the local setting like your same institution or your same area of residence. For example, students, they say it's high, they can accept the in-depth interview, very high. Focus group, very high. Availability is moderate. And assistance in technology, none. Graduates, students in a local place, data collection idea is very high. FGD is very high. Availability is very high, and assistance, they don't need assistance. If you look at this chart the graph that I've showed you, it seems graduate students are available than most of the people. Then we have the executive, they are moderately available. If you ask them for focus group discussion, they are not available, and the availability is moderately low. Then we have teachers, they are highly involved in IDI and FGD, and the availability is moderate because I believe this is because they are busy, they are teaching. But what is interesting is for the retirees, they are highly interested in IDI and also in focus group discussions, and they are also available, but they need internet technology assistance. Rural people, they are available, but they also need technological assistance. When we look at a national level, we find that college students, they are available, and you can get them very highly on IDI, moderately on focus group discussion, and moderately available. They don't need technological assistance. Graduate students, we find that also they are highly available when you look for them for IDI and FGD. And if you want to get them, there are chances that you may not get them, so they are rated as moderate. For executive, it's moderate. Not for FGD, availability is very low, and for teachers, it's the same. Then we come for international, we find that still college students, now they are moderately in IDEA. Graduate, they're still high for in-depth interview, but if you ask them for first group discussion, the focus group discussion, they are moderately, so which the availability is moderate. Executive for international, for IDI, it's low. For focus group discussion, they are not available, and usually for their availability is very low. For teachers, it's all moderate and they don't need assistance on the technical part. For retirees, they are available and they are highly available, but they also need technological assistance. On the other hand, the rural people, they can be available for IDI and for focus group discussions, but they still need technological assistance. As we come to the conclusion, I have this long, short conclusion. It says data collection during the pandemic is a challenge task. However, it is also exciting, adventurous, and a learning process for PhD students. Participants' attitude in data collection is congruent with the resilience theory. The second one is that the participant had choices either to wait for the end of the pandemic or to venture into the unknown in the data collection.
You miss me or my friend?
The proponents of the choice theory are said that almost all behaviors are by choice. And the third one is that toughness presented by participants affirm that in times of challenges, humans can emerge victoriously. This resonates with the resilience theory. And we find the fourth one is the finding shows that it is possible to collect qualitative data during the pandemic. Motivation theory says that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation helps people to overcome challenges. The keys are innovation, flexibility, adaptivity, patience, and choosing to collect data ethically. Thank you. God bless you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mandhla. I wish I could give you a, I cannot, I don't see the sign about virtual heart, whatever. So I will just clap my hand here. Thank you so much. And Dr. Pavel, this is now time for us for our question and answer. We have several questions here. I also noticed that we have questions posted in the chat box. So those of you who posted in the chat box, will you please transfer your questions to the Q&A? Please, I noticed that we had a question earlier about Mandhla. There's a question about why do you have this parenthesis? Yeah, at the end of your quotes, you have the parentheses where you have like 79 or 80 or whatever. What are those? Can you please explain?
Okay, those are the direct quotes which I got from my data analysis. So each,
but from your transcript, right?
yes.
So those 79 is what that is the page number.
That is the line number.
Yeah, the line number, the line number. Okay, so to the one who asked, I'm sorry, I missed to get your name. That one. So maybe you can put there, Mandhla, like L period then 79, or if it's like lines, then maybe the LS period maybe 79 and hyphen 80. All right. Okay, we have Dr. Pavel. We have questions here in the Q&A. Again, I think you are asking question in the chat box. Please, can you see there's a Q&A box here? Okay, so Pavel, how do we?
Yeah, we have several questions.
And also, please do not miss that Dr. King also raised his hand.
Yes. Yeah, I will give him time. Just let me read the first one. There are two questions from Sir Malik Muhammad Omer Mansour. As you said, data collection was difficult, and so we assume that the data the data is not 100% accurate due to problems in data collection process, and also you transcribe data through author and found issues in transcription. Then why have you not opted for Delphi technique just to make sure that there is no ambiguity left in views of participants that came to you? So this is the first question. Mandhla, would you like to?
Yeah, Mandhla, so the question is about the maybe authenticity of your data. How did you ensure that the data that you gathered was authentic?
Okay, I think on my one slide, I showed that after transcribing, I send back the transcript to the participants for verification and for triangulation. And I think according to when you're transcribing, there is no 100% word-to-word correct transcript application that we have, because people speak differently, but because we have recorded, you can still correct those minor issues. They don't really affect the quality of data. It's just a spelling, or because sometimes a person might say, I stay in Silang. The app cannot write Silang. It will write maybe something in English, because this is a local name. So you need to listen to the recording, correct it, and send it back. So I don't think this affects the quality of data at all. And maybe what was the other question?
The second one is, do you feel that the results of your study are of objective nature only and not subjective and generic? This is due to the fact that you only had a small data from 11 sources. So overall, your data is small. Your data might have ambiguity, as data collection process was not only tough, but also that the researcher was not physically in contact with the participant, and also participants were in mental pressure due to pandemic. So overall, we can say that all this scenario had its psychological or mental impact on the participants, and this leaves a great loophole in this research.
Thank you for that question. And
yeah.
I think these are assumptions that anyone can say, but they are not, I cannot say they are proven, that we can say the participants were under stress or they were psychologically influenced. Yes, they might be, but we don't have any proof. Maybe if there are studies which shows that the students and participants during this time, they're psychologically affected, then maybe it can be a consideration. But for now, I think, as I said, we collected about 11 participants. That was the out of 14, yes, out of 14 which were collecting data during the pandemic. So which means from this institution, I almost got, what is 11 out of 14? That is about 80-something% of the participants, which means when we look at the setting of this institution, this data is relevant to the study.
Yeah, I think you can speak a little bit more, Mandhla, about the research setting, because the research setting, like what kind of participants do you have? And in this research setting, we can say that students are 2 students in this research setting. So I'm referring to these PhD students who did their data collection online and were participants of Mandhla. I can say that collecting data online or holding or participating in virtual classes, in meetings, in this research setting, almost everything was done online. And students here, even from their masters and also in their PhD, many of the courses are offered online and virtually. So it's a natural thing. I would like to say that students are adept in terms of using Zoom and other online modalities. So I think the research setting, the description of the research setting can say something about how credible the data can be.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, we continue to the next question. I see that we have additional questions. Yeah,
yes, but maybe we will allow now Dr. Costa to ask his question.
Yeah.
So I'm allowing him to talk now. Dr. King, please.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sally and Pavel, for giving me the opportunity, and great presentation, Mandhla. I enjoyed it. I had a little bit of distractions. I was going in and out, but I really enjoyed most of your presentation. I also observed the issue. First of all, 2 issues I observed. What did the study do to you? In other words, what experiences, what changes did they, or how did the study, the process of this research impact you, number 1? And number 2 as well, how did you, somebody raised, for instance, the question about authenticity of data, and there was a suggestion that perhaps the participants could have been stretched. But my interest is now, I do believe, as Dr. Aseli just said, that there is now, an adaptation to online platforms. But when we used to meet participants face to face, there were a lot of things that we could observe that, unfortunately, when we use online platforms, you only see maybe a face only. So that part of observation, that would also add rigor to your study. How believable and credible could you make an assessment of that? Seeing that you were not there with the people. In other words, were the people being authentic in what they were saying, or they were just saying it because they are very far and seeing you the way I'm seeing you now? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that question. Let me start with the first one, that how did it impact me? As a PhD student, I also looked at, we don't know when the pandemic is going to end, and maybe something greater might come which might affect our data collection. So for me, it helped me to understand that it is possible to get qualitative data using remote. As I said, it is not a new thing, but people were reluctant to adapt to it. So I find it exciting that we can still get quality and credible data using remote means. And coming to the second point of the how usually we observe people skills, we observe their behaviors as part of data collection, which is true. And when we use Zoom, it has limitations. How do we only see the face? But I think most of the things that we observe when we talk to people is their facial expression. And also noting that these are also PhD students who collected data. So they knew what they were doing, compared to if I was collecting maybe to somebody who did not know anything about data collection. So I believe there is, I can say we might have a limitation on observing the whole part of the body, but when you look at facial expression, you can tell what the participants is saying.
All right, thank you, Mandla. Dr. Pavel, I want to add something. You
Yes.
see, the study of Mandla is unique in a way that he did his data collection, his own data collection online, and his topic is he interviewed people who did their data collection online. Do you get that one? So in the case of Mandla, I think the observation of the context is not really significant, because he was just asking these PhD students about, how you did your data collection, etc. But I think what is crucial here was the question of Dr. King was, what were your participants, Mandla, able to observe? For example, you showed a chart where you said like this participant did an appreciative inquiry, this participant did a phenomenology, this participant did case study, right? You had something like those, and they were dealing with different topics. Now I remember that during our interview with Janet Sammons, do you remember? She was our keynote speaker during our sixth AQRA International. Yes, that's the sixth AQRA International Conference last October. And she's a guru or director of the SAGE method space. And I asked him the question like, so suppose you, how do you mitigate this one? You do not see the environment because you're doing this one online. And you know what she suggested was, you as the researcher, you can ask your participant to say, can you give me a tour around your house? Can you give me a tour in your classroom or in your school? Something like that, doing online. That is different, of course, from being really there. But, we have to do something. As Mandla said at the beginning, we'll research, especially like collecting data, qualitative data, stop because of this situation, the context we are in. And the answer is, we hope no. Research, on the other hand, should continue because there are many phenomena we have to understand during this pandemic. Now, Dr. Pavel, our time is ready. I
think so.
Already. Yeah.
I'm so sorry we have to stop by now, but
Yes.
we will ask Mandla to answer these questions, and we will bring them back to you next time. So I'm copying all the questions now.
All right. That would be good. These are nice questions.
Sure.
They are asking for the PowerPoint. Yes, we will show. We will post the PowerPoint and the recording. We also post in the AQRA FB page. Now we will give, okay, Dr. Pavel, now shall we give the time now to Dr. Grazel and Dr. Jasmine to continue the program, please.
Right. Thank you so much, Mandhla, Khanye, for your presentation. On behalf of the AQRA leadership team, I happily present the certificate of recognition to you for your valuable service today as the resource speaker on the topic Getting Close from Far Away, a case study on qualitative data collection of PhD students during the COVID-19 pandemic during the AQRA Virtual Colloquium today, May 26, 2022. And this is signed by the President, Dr. Rosario, Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Zabkov, and Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Lamoa. Congratulations, Mandhla, and thank you for generously sharing your paper. At
Thank
this
you very much.
point, yes, thank you once again. At this point, we would like to